So last class you started exercise 18, which kind of gave a majority of us kind of a little bit of practice of getting used to using AutoCAD. Okay, as it is very different from using the Adobe software, we wanted to kind of give you a couple classes to kind of prepare yourself. For those of you that already have CAD experience, this should definitely be kind of an easy part of the semester. So take advantage in getting other parts of maybe your portfolio done or working on other aspects of the course, as this might be an easier and quicker process for you. If that's the case, that's totally fine. Let me know. For those of you that do have a little bit more CAD experience, you can maybe take or maybe elevate this final project a little bit more than maybe what the standards are. So just kind of a way to just to kind of try to make you to do a little bit more. So if you already know CAD pretty well, so just kind of a little extra challenge. Today we're going to be working on exercise 19. We're going to create the floor plan for exercise 5. So what exercise 5 is you'll be doing CAD floor plans and CAD elevations for our cabin. Okay. For the rest of the semester, yeah.
What's our keyword today?
Keyword's Yosemite. So for exercise 5, you're going to be doing the floor plans and the elevations for our cabin. We'll be working on our cabin exercise or our cabin assignment for the rest of the semester. Okay. Today I'm going to show you guys the site. The site is in Yosemite, which probably a lot of you are familiar with, or maybe have driven through or even experienced it before. So we'll go over the site. We'll look at it in Google Earth, and we'll kind of familiarize yourself with the site and kind of its boundaries and its limitations. And this will be a really fun end of the semester, as this is really our first kind of design exercise. This is a great opportunity to pretend that you have a client, and I'm going to give you kind of some stipulations to the site and some different kind of design goals and objectives. But for the most part, the rest is up to you. You guys get to design your own cabin. Okay, so I'll go over kind of what the limitations are here in just a little bit. So for exercise 5 is just a little refresher. Exercise 5, all you're going to be creating are line drawings for both your floor plan and your elevations. For assignment number 6, you're going to be creating rendered elevations and rendered floor plans. Okay, so we're going to be bringing our floor plans into SketchUp, to which we will also bring them into Photoshop. Okay, so we'll be kind of transitioning into a new piece of software, but we'll also be kind of backtracking a little bit and going back and using the tools that we used in Photoshop and InDesign and Illustrator. Okay, and then as you guys know, assignment number 7 is going to be our portfolio, which will be kind of the all-comprehensive everything throughout the entire semester. So put forth lots of effort into this final portion of the year, as it will compile a lot of your grade. Okay, it'll be several exercises. We'll have about 7 or 8 exercises that we work on the cabin. We'll also have 2 assignments and the portfolio. They all involve our cabin exercise. Okay, so I'll talk about a little bit more about the cabin in just a few minutes. I've also posted exercise 20, which is going to be the portfolio progress review. Okay, that is the Monday after you come back from spring break. I will not give you any additional exercises for spring break, so I'm not actually expecting you to make progress on your cabin. If you do want to work on anything, if you worked on, for maybe 3 or 4 hours, you worked on your portfolio, that would be fantastic. So what I'm expecting for you to bring on the Monday after we come back from spring break is just to bring your most comprehensive and compiled version of your portfolio. I'm not expecting a final product. I'm not expecting you to have it completely dialed in, but I'd like you guys to have, at least made a good effort up to this point to have some nice composition, have some nice organization to your portfolio. I want to see what you're thinking in terms of those 2 things, okay? And so that will allow me to sit down with each and every one of you and give you a good 5-10 minutes of advice on how you can move forward with that, okay? So like I mentioned last class, the more that you can bring to this to this review, the more that I can help you guys out. If you don't bring much and you just bring in, you know, your cover page and that's it, I'm not going to be able to help you out, and you're not going to, you know, come very prepared for your final portfolio. So looking at last year as an example, the people that brought in the most for this portfolio review had the best portfolios at the end of the semester because they had the most advice, okay, and they knew exactly how to move forward from it. Okay, any questions about any of those things? Good? All right, good. So let's move on. Today will be a fairly short day. We'll talk about AutoCAD for about 15-20 minutes. I'll go over the site for where we'll be building our cabin, okay? And then I'll show you a few new AutoCAD commands, and then I'll go ahead and turn you guys loose. For those of you that don't have an architectural background, which I know some of you do, if you need help with designing a cabin, just let me know. I'll go around and talk to everybody today for at least 5 minutes, try to look at what you're thinking for your floor plan, and I'll give you as many pointers as I can, okay? I'd highly recommend, before you get throwing lines down in AutoCAD, to pull out a pad and paper and do some sketching first, okay? You can probably get some, you know, quick forms, some quick ideas. If you just sketch out your ideas really quick, I'll come by and I'll look at them just so you don't spend a bunch of time, you know, drawing the floor plan in AutoCAD, as it'll take you a lot more time to revise an AutoCAD plan than it will to just quickly erase and, you know, revise some sketches, okay? So spend a good half an hour today and sketch out some ideas for your plan. But this will be a fun exercise, and that everyone can kind of, you know, throw down their design skills and start to, you know, be creative and make your own little dream cabin up in Yosemite, okay? So let's go ahead and dive right into the assignment. If you click on exercise 19, there should be 2 files that are available to you, okay? One is going to be this building site file. It's a .kmz file. What that is a Google Earth file. If you download and double click on this file, it will take you right to the site in Yosemite, okay? The next file is a topography file for the area that we'll be building, so you kind of can get an idea of what the site is actually like. So Google Earth will give you a good idea on where the sun is, where it rises, where it sets. So you can kind of get an idea of the terrain that's around you. But in terms of the actual kind of floor plane that you're working with, the topography file will give you a better understanding of what that is. So you'll realize that when you look at the Google Earth file, that you're going to see nothing but trees and mountains. So you can't really get an idea of the floor plane. Okay, so if you download that file here, you can double click on it. That will take you right to right to Google Earth.
Which file? The topography or
The Kmz file, building site 105. Okay, so if you click on that file, you should get you'll get something that looks kind of like this. How many people here have been to Yosemite before? Good, actually a pretty good amount of you. Have you guys, anybody hiked Half Dome by chance?
I hiked West Dome, the other one.
The West Dome, which is on, the other side, which is right over here. Oh, this one right here. Yes, so absolutely amazing hike if you by chance ever get the chance to do it. It is really tough. It takes took me about 16 hours, but it's the hike of a lifetime. When you're up there, you feel like you're on top of the earth. You are higher than everything as far as you can see. So it's pretty amazing. You can do it in one day, but a lot of people will camp down here. But anyways, moving on. So you'll notice this little yellow pin. This little yellow pin is where the site that we're going to be working with is. You'll notice that it's between it's in a nice little valley between these two very steep rock faces on both sides. Okay, so let's see if I orient myself north. So east is going to be out this direction over here. So east is facing Half Dome. For those of you that don't know what Half Dome is, it's this little baby outcropping right here. So east is going to be Half Dome, so that's going to be where the sun rises, okay? And then it's going to set in the west over here towards the right of the site that you can see. Something to keep in mind is, you're not going to get a lot of sun until you're probably kind of in the early afternoon because of all the rocks, okay? So it might be 10 or 11 o'clock before you actually have sun directly ahead of you. Let's see how close we can get to our site, okay? So you can't tell super well from the Google Earth file. It'll start to kind of render itself here in a second, but there's a road right here. So this is the road that you can actually physically drive and actually explore the area if you really wanted to. I think I actually had a group of students go up there last year and actually look at the site for fun, but by no means is that a requirement. So in between the road, you'll notice a little cabin that's already there. There's also a river that runs right here, okay? You can see a bridge right here. You can actually see a little bit of water up here at the top, but there is a river that runs right through the site, okay? So that gives you a little understanding of what to expect. If you want to kind of see what it actually looks like, if you haven't used Google Earth before, you can kind of go in and click on any of these little pictures right here. All of these pictures are images that people have taken and uploaded to Google Earth. So a lot of them are pretty spectacular, but if you go through there and spend 5-10 minutes looking at that, you'll get a good idea of what it looks like. Could you actually build something here in real life? Probably not. It's very heavily wooded unless you chop down a ton of trees, which they definitely won't let you do in Yosemite.
I think they don't.
Yeah, it's a national park, but it just kind of more of the idea is to kind of give you an idea on just kind of having some design stipulations to what it is that you're building. Okay, so if you do actually embark on the Half Dome hike, I believe you start right over here and you walk all the way around here. You walk all the way around this hill. Over here are all of the famous falls that you've probably heard of: Yosemite Falls, Vernal Falls. You hike all the way up this little gorge here. You go right up the side of this waterfall. You go all the way around over here. You walk all the way around over here. And then you walk up this little cliff right along this area. Then you come up and you actually physically go right up the side of, actually right here. You walk up the side of this, you walk right up the top, and then you actually walk up to the very tippity top. It's very tough, and when you get to the very, very top, most people will stand right here at this little tip and they'll look right down to the very bottom. It's pretty scary. I got instant vertigo the second that I did it. I thought I was going to fall off, but I creeped over the edge and just kind of poked my head over. You can actually probably see. Let's see if I can get a better picture. Let's see. Sorry, it's just kind of a cool thing, so I like to show you guys. Let's see. Here's the cable ladder. So these are actually all people that are going up there. So when you actually hike up to the top, there are 2 cables, and you're walking at an incline that's about like this. So some people will belay themselves into the cables. Most people, though, just go right up to the top. It's pretty scary. Probably I think for a while, about 8 to a dozen people died on it every single year. So now you actually have to have a permit to go up to the top. But it's still, if you're in decent shape, you can do it. My pops did it with me, so that's proof that anybody can do it. So, anyways, that's our site. Any questions about the site at all? Good? All right. So feel free to go in and explore using that file. There's lots of really cool stuff down here. If you've never been to Yosemite, definitely have some fun playing with that. Okay. So the next file is going to be our topography file. So let's go ahead and download that as well. We'll use that as our base to design our cabin. Okay. So click on topography DWG. All right, and we will open that up in. It's so funny that the default is not AutoCAD to open that up in. But we'll start by opening up AutoCAD 2017. We'll open up that topo file. We'll have it in just a sec. All right, so File, Open, Drawing, and we'll go over to my desktop and we'll open this up. Has anybody ever looked at a topography map before? Does everyone kind of know how they work? Okay, well if you don't know how they work, that's totally okay. So if you've seen a topography map, they look something kind of like this. What each of these lines means is a change in elevation, okay? So in the project that we're working on, each one of these lines represents a foot of elevation change, okay? So you can see that from what you can probably get here is that the elevation right here is much steeper than the elevation right here, okay? So this is a very gradual change in elevation, and this is a very steep change in elevation, okay? So you know that because the lines are closer together, okay? So this is a very large site. This actually, let's just measure this really quickly. Okay, so this is actually 1,000 feet by 1,000 feet of topography lines, okay? Your actual house that you're gonna be creating is actually only about, you know, maybe about that size, okay? So that's about kind of the size that you're gonna be working with, okay? To kind of give you an idea of what's around you, north is up, okay? Half Dome is to the east, which is to the right, and that river that we talked about is right along this little trough right here, okay? So you can see it because there's a nice, you can easily see the change in contours along the bottom of the steep cliffside, which is right over here, okay? So this kind of gives you an idea of what's around you, okay? The road is probably somewhere right in this area. That cabin is probably somewhere right in here. Okay, so the reason why I give you the topography file is because it will make a difference in your elevations when we work on them next week. Okay, so I'll talk about it more then and how that will play a little bit of a change in how you design your elevations. Okay, so for now, let's kind of get a little introduction about what I'm expecting for the cabin. Okay, so if you go over to Canvas and you go to assignment number 5. You'll get a little brief rundown of the cabin program. Okay, so imagine what you're going to be doing is you're going to be imagining that you are the architect and your clients is a husband and wife. They don't have kids and they're looking for a nice little quaint little cabin up in Yosemite. Okay, so this is what they've requested for their cabin. They've requested 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, and at least 400 square feet. Okay, so it's a quaint little cabin. I'm not expecting you to design, you know, this big luxurious, you know, castle or estate up in Yosemite, okay? I would rather you concentrate on designing something small and intimate and put more attention to detail into the design, okay? If you want to go a little bigger, that's fine. The maximum square footage that I want you to stick to is 1,000 square feet, okay? But you know, obviously, the more that you design, the more work you're gonna be creating in the elevations and the perspectives. It'll lead to more work later on down the future. So if this is something that's new for you and you maybe are taking things a little slower than others, go with the smaller 400, 500, 600 square foot cabin. Okay, so you'll include 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom. That should be about 400 square feet. The living space should include a fireplace and windows, and should be about 200 square feet. Okay, the kitchen and which should be open to the living space should be about 150 square feet. Dining space should be about 150 square feet. All in all, that should not exceed 1,000 square feet, okay? These can be a little bit smaller. These are just kind of maximum general sizes for those of you that have never designed a house before or don't have any experience. Those are just kind of general square footages that those space could be, okay? But don't exceed it by too much, okay? So 1,000 square feet should be the max. Maybe choose, you know, a few hundred square feet less than that if this is something new for you, okay? So those are gonna be the design stipulations. Other than this, it's completely up to you. So feel free to think about materials, think about what you want your cabin to be made out of, okay? Think about the views, think about the site that's around you and what you might see. Okay, so one of the design or one of the requirements for the program is to have large, I would include large expansive windows in the living room, that faces something. Okay, so think about your site and what it is that you're facing. You have a river behind you. You have a lot of trees. You have some large you have some large outcroppings of trees and rocks, and there's all kinds of stuff around you. So think about what it is that you're seeing when you're designing the house. Okay, if you have a road on one side, maybe your windows don't face the road. So think about privacy and think about what you would want in your cabin if this was actually your place. Okay, there are no rules. Okay, but if you're doing something that's a little crazy and it doesn't make any sense, I will tell you. Okay, but for the most part, there's no rules. You can pick whatever materials you want. I would recommend some kind of a sloped roof. Okay, I wouldn't do like a roof with a parapet or a flat roof. The reason is actually if you were to actually build a house in Yosemite, they wouldn't let you do that because you have to take into account that you will have snow in your cabin in the winter. Okay, so if you have a lot of snow in an area where your cabin's going to be built, they generally make you do sloped roofs so that the snow falls off of your roof. Okay, so something to think about. If you have any other questions about the design process, just let me know. I'll help everyone out as much as I can. Yeah.
I have like blocks for the furniture. Can you use?
Sure. Yeah, and I'll talk a little bit more about this later. So I know he has some CAD experience. Yes, I'll talk about blocks a little bit later. So what blocks are just basic, already pre-drawn pieces of furniture for CAD. I don't expect you to draw all of your furniture. Okay, I want you to spend more time creating a nicely designed space. All of the CAD blocks, I'll give you that stuff if you need it. You can also download it online. I'll show you some websites probably next week to where you can do that. But today you should concentrate on the floor plan and how that actually works. Okay. Other questions? Yeah.
We're only doing, so this assignment's only the blueprints pretty much, not the actual building itself, like making it like a 3D rendition.
We will be doing that. So the first step is to draw the floor plans and elevations in CAD, okay? And then we're going to take those elevations, we're going to bring them into SketchUp, and we're going to create a 3D model of our cabin, okay? Yes, you could go right away into SketchUp, but the point is to learn a little bit of CAD first, learn how to do it in both pieces of software, okay? What we're actually focusing on for the next few weeks is actually the process of using CAD, the process of importing your CAD files into SketchUp, how to build it in 3D, and then how to use SketchUp and actually pull it into Photoshop and the other pieces of software that we learned. So we're now getting to the point where we're not just focused on one piece of software, we're focused on how they all work together, okay, and how you can bring files from one to the other and actually, create some really cool stuff, okay? Any more questions before we move on to AutoCAD? Good? All right. Sounds good. So let's go ahead and jump back over to AutoCAD. Let's start with our topography file. Okay. Oops, I thought I already had that. Here we go. All right, so the first thing that we're going to talk about is we're going to briefly talk about layers, okay? Let me pull up my notes real quick for today's class. We're going to talk about layers and more. We're going to get a more extensive talk in layers next week, okay? But I want to at least kind of give you a brief rundown on how they work today, okay? So as I mentioned last class, this is going to be your little toolbar that has to do with all of your layer organization, okay? So just like Photoshop and InDesign, we have layers that organize all of our lines, okay? If we click on this button right here that says Layer Properties, okay, we click on that and you will notice that currently we have 2 layers, okay? By default, AutoCAD gives you the 0 layer, so every time you start a new AutoCAD file, you will get 1 layer and that will be the 0 layer, okay? Included in this topography layer is also a topography layer. All right. So if we look at a couple of the features of the layer of the layer properties, you'll notice this little green check mark right here. Okay. What the green check mark means is that is the current active layer. Okay. So if I continue drawing right now, I will continue drawing on the topography layer. Okay. So then we have the name of the layer. And then if you go to the right, if we actually make this a little bit bigger, we can kind of expand what some of these things mean. Okay, so this just says on. If you actually click on the light bulb, that will basically hide and unhide the layer. Okay, so if I click on the light bulb right now, it's telling you the current layer will be turned off. What do you want to do? I can click on turn that layer off and it will disappear. The reason why that message came up is because it's currently my active layer. It's telling you this is your active layer. Are you sure you want to turn this off? Okay, for just the purposes of showing you guys what we're doing, that's how that works. So if you ever want to hide a specific layer, all you'll want to do is you will click on that little light bulb, okay, and it will go away. So just like you would kind of similarly do in Photoshop or InDesign or Illustrator. All right. The next button is going to be the freeze icon. You'll notice a little sun here. If you click on that, so it's telling me the current layer cannot be frozen. So I'm going to make the current layer layer 0. And I'm going to go back over to topography and I'm going to click on that little sun, and you'll notice that the sun goes from a sun to an icicle. Okay, so that icicle means the layer is currently frozen. Okay, so what it's actually not what I wanted it to be. So that means that the layer is currently frozen and you cannot make any edits to it whatsoever. Okay, so the next icon is going to be the lock. Okay, the lock will keep you from, it will keep the layer on the screen. You will continue to see it, but if you click on the lock, you'll notice that it obviously goes into the lock position. But another thing that you'll notice is that all of the line work became gray. Okay, so now I can't move it. I can select it, but I can't do anything to it. Okay, it's just there, so it's there for reference. All right, so I would highly recommend before you start really kicking off drawing on your floor plan, and if you're going to be working on this file, to lock the topography so that you don't accidentally move any of those lines. You might think that, oh, what are the chances of that happening? But the second that you think about that, it will happen to you, and you're going to be wondering how to get it back. Okay, so locking is an option. You generally pick that once you know you don't want something to move anymore. Okay, so next you have color. Color is just the basic color of the line that you see here on the screen. Okay, once we talk about layers in more detail, you'll learn that those colors have a specific meaning. Okay, but for now, as you're drawing your floor plan, feel free to just draw on white. We'll worry about the layers a little bit later. Okay, so for now, that's all you need. To create a new layer, you'll go up here to this, what looks like 3 pieces of paper and a little, kind of like a little sun next to it, okay, or like a little kind of kaboom. If you click on that right there, it will create a new layer. What you're going to want to do is you're going to create a layer for your floor plan, okay? So floor plan, all right? So that will allow you to turn your floor plan on and off as you want to work on it, okay? As we develop our floor plan more in the next week or so, we'll actually create individual layers for the different components of our house, okay? So typically you have a layer for your exterior walls, a layer for your interior walls, your kitchen, your tile, your flooring. I mean, you'll have a layer for every little aspect of the house, okay? We won't dive into that too deep this semester, but we will be creating some more layers next week, okay? For today, all you're gonna need to do is just create a layer for your floor plan. All right. If you find the topography a little bit distracting, that's okay. You can go ahead and just turn it off for now, or whatever you need to do is totally fine by me. I'm going to turn this off for just demonstration purposes. All right. So let's turn that off. Oops. Sorry, that's not what I meant to do. Let's go ahead and freeze it, and that will turn that off right there. And I'm going to go ahead and make my active layer, my floor plan, by double clicking on floor plan. Okay, so last class we talked about a couple different tools. We talked about, let's exit our layers, okay? We talked about line, we talked about polyline, we talked about circle, arc, some of our basic drawing tools. We also talked about a few of our modification tools, okay? So we talked about move, we talked about mirror, we talked about trim, okay? I'll go over those again here in just a few minutes. It's just kind of a little bit of a refresher for those that maybe are having a little bit of trouble on kind of understanding the process of using them. As a lot of you guys are probably realizing, CAD is very much a process-based program, okay? It's very easy for a command to not work by simply diverging from that kind of that sequence of working. Okay, so if that happens, don't let that discourage you. Just you'll quickly start to understand that process and that sequence of how things work. Okay, the key is once you start using a command is to follow the prompts down here in your type command bar and the prompts that pop up on your screen. They tell you exactly what to do. If you need to kind of move slow initially, do that. Okay, so today we're going to learn a couple more commands. All right, so I'm going to and also use a few of the commands that we also talked about last class. Okay, the first one that we're going to talk about is fillet. Okay, so if I were to, I'm just going to kind of create a very arbitrary cabin here. So maybe our cabin is something like that. All right, so you're going to run into several instances where you might get something that looks kind of like this. Okay, you're noticing that the lines are overlapping, and what you want is a nice clean corner. Okay, so what fillet does is it actually creates a nice little radius for you. So let's see, let me draw this on the screen so it makes a little bit more sense. Or on the board. So what fillet is typically used to do, we're actually going to kind of learn what it's typically used for, and we're going to kind of learn kind of what the cheating way of what actually a lot of people actually use it for. So typically, let's say you're designing like a parking lot, okay, where you have lots of radiuses, you have lots of kind of big arcs that you're working with. Well, you might have a line that looks something like that, and a line that looks something like that. Well, what fillet does is you select your two lines and it puts a nice little perfect radius on there for you, okay? So let's look at how to use that. So if I hover over we'll just say this is the outline of my cabin. So if you type in F is the shortcut for fillet, okay? And I hit enter, the first thing that it says is select first object, okay? So the first object I'm going to select is my first line, and then it's going to say select the second object, which will be my second line, okay? Notice when I hover my mouse over that second line, it's showing you how that join is going to happen, okay? So it's going to create a nice perfect 90-degree arc, okay? So I'm going to select that second line, and you'll notice that it gave me a nice clean corner, okay? The reason why it gave me a nice clean corner and it didn't give me something like this is because the radius is currently set to 0. So that's the nice thing about fillet is that it does basically two things. It gives me a nice clean 90-degree corner if that's what I want, but it also gives me an arced corner, okay? So let's look at how we would get the arced corner. Let's go back to what we have. Again, I'm going to hit F for fillet, enter. I'm going to, before I click on the first object, notice down here it says fillet, select first object, or it says hit U for undo, P for polyline, R for radius, trim, multiple. So it gives you a handful of options on what you can do next with this command, okay? So what I'm going to do instead of selecting the first line is I'm going to hit R for radius, okay? I then hit enter. And then it says specify the fillet radius. So right now by default it's saying 1/2 inch. That's really like nothing. You probably won't even really see that radius on the screen unless you really zoom in. But let's try putting in something that's fairly noticeable. We'll say like 2 feet. I go ahead and hit enter. Now it says to select the first object, and when I hover my mouse over the second object, you can see that it's actually creating that radius, okay? So that's only 2 feet, so that's hardly noticeable. I actually didn't pay any attention to scale when I drew those original lines, but when I select that second line, it gives me a joined connection, but it also gives me a nice radius, okay? So I'll do that one more time. And so I do fillet, R for radius. I'll make this something much more noticeable, like 6 feet. I'll select my first line, and I will select my second line. So still barely noticeable, all right? But that gives you an idea of what that does. Fillet, radius, let's do like 15 feet. You gotta get something that's more noticeable. Wow, it's still hardly anything. So, but you guys get the point, okay? So that's gonna be what the fillet command does. Now the next one that we're gonna talk about is chamfer, okay? Chamfer is very similar to fillet in that it joins corners, but instead of getting that nice perfect radius, it's going to give you a nice chamfered end. Okay, so it's going to give you a nice kind of angled connection like this. Okay, but just like fillet, you can use chamfer, and if you don't give it any dimension, it will just create a 90-degree. It'll just create a 90-degree bend. The difference between the two is that it's a lot easier to use fillet, as you're just hitting F versus CH. Okay, but if you need that kind of a connection between your two different lines, you'll type in, actually, CHA is the shortcut for chamfer. Okay. Just like we did for fillet when we clicked on R for radius, instead of hitting R, you're going to hit D for distance. All right, and we'll make something like 6 feet. Okay, specify second chamfer distance. I'm going to make that the same thing, and now I will select both my first and my second line. Okay, so now notice that I have a nice chamfered corner. Okay, so when would you might use that? Maybe you have a kind of a special feature on the corner of your cabin. Maybe there's a really nice window on that corner. Completely up to you. You could have a nice corner that has like a bay window, okay, where you might actually have a radius. But how you use the commands is completely up to you. My goal is to just show you them so that you're aware that they're there. The last thing that I want to happen is for you to have a design idea but not know how to put it on paper, okay? So, and that's often a big drawback, especially, I actually see it all the time in my workplace, or in my workplace and past workplaces, where a designer will kind of have a really cool idea, but they don't know how to like model it, so they don't end up doing it. Which could be very much a bummer. So my goal is that if you do have a question on how to create a certain shape, let me know. I'll do my best to help you achieve that. Okay. The chamfer? Yep. Okay, so you might have a scenario kind of like this. All right, so you do CHA for chamfer, enter. Then I'm going to hit D for distance. It's going to ask you to specify 2 different chamfer distances. Okay, I typically do the same distance for both. That will give you a nice even connection like this. You can specify multiple distances if you want, but you're not going to get that even look like you see right here. Okay, you might get something that looks like this. Okay, so all you're doing is just changing that angle. But you start to get into kind of some more complicated measures. Okay, so again, CHA for chamfer, D for distance. We'll say 15 feet. I'm going to do the same thing for the second chamfer. Then I will select line A and line B, and you get that nice chamfered corner. Okay. Another scenario where you might use this, not just when they're intersecting, but you might have something that looks kind of like this. Okay, you might have a drawing where you have one line like that, and maybe you have a line that's kind of like that. Okay, so you know that you want these two to trim. You want these two to come together. So obviously you could go like this, you could click on it, you could drag it out, you can click on this one, you could pull it over, but that's when CAD becomes really inefficient and it takes you forever to create things. So understanding how these tools work, the first thing you would do is you would go to fillet. Okay, now I'm going to click on radius again one more time because I have a 15-foot radius currently set to it, but I'm going to go ahead and change the radius to 0, and then I will select my first line and my second line, and that will join those 2 lines together. Okay, so that's probably fillet. Between fillet, line, polyline, those are probably the most common line tools that you'll use. You'll use them absolutely all the time. Okay, so another little trick as you guys are drawing, and a trick that will help you become more efficient, is if you want to duplicate a command, so you just want to do that command again, all you have to do is hit the space bar after you use it. Okay, so let me backtrack. I do F for fillet. I select my first line and my second line. And if I hit the space bar, it will just reactivate that same command. Okay, so you don't have to put CHA again and then CHA again or F again. You can just simply hit the space bar and you can keep using that same tool over and over. Okay. Another tool that we did not talk about last time is rotate. Okay, so if you go up here, you can click on the rotate command. You can also just hit RO. RO is the shortcut for rotate. You'll hit enter, and then it will give you a prompt that says to specify the base point of your rotation. Okay, so think about, where do you want the center axis of your rotation to be? Okay, do you want it to be here on the corner? Do you want it to be over on this side? But notice if I click here, that becomes my my center of the rotation of my element. Okay. You could either just click down, click once, and that will place your object wherever you clicked. You can also specify the amount that you want it to rotate. Okay, so I hit RO for rotate, and if I want it to rotate clockwise, I would just type in something like 90 or 180 for the amount of degrees that you want it to turn. You can also type in -90 or -180, and you will get it to go the opposite. Okay, so typically you work in like 90-degree intervals, 45-degree intervals, but of course you will run into times when you don't do that. But so again, I can just specify my rotation angle. I type in 90, enter. Notice that it turned exactly 90 degrees. Okay. Another one that you'll use a lot is copy. Okay, so you click on copy, and kind of just like rotation, you're going to specify a base point from where you're copying to and from, and you simply can click on that, and you can copy that object as many times as you want. You can also just type in the distance that you want it to copy. Okay, so I can, do something like, 100 feet. All right, so I'm working at a ridiculous scale right now. This line is actually like 1,000 feet long. That's why I didn't really move that far. But the point is that you can type in or specify exactly how far you want to move an object. You probably encountered a scenario when you were creating your floor plan last class to where you had to maybe move windows over. Copy is a great command, so to quickly move an object or multiple objects at one time. Okay. Let's see. I think that's about it for now. There's a few more tools that we'll go over the next few classes, but I want to kind of keep it fairly simple. I'll introduce 4 or 5 new commands every class. The goal is to practice, practice, practice. The more that you practice, the more familiar you'll become with the tools. The goal is to kind of be that you become so intuitive with the commands that you just kind of naturally use those commands when you know you need to use them. Okay, you want your first thought to be, what command do I need to use to kind of finish the task that I have in my head most efficiently. Okay, so there are multiple ways that you can get from A to B in AutoCAD, but efficiency is the most important part. Okay, any questions? Good. All right, let's go ahead and stop there. Let's, I have one more thing actually I want to show you, and then we're gonna go. Let me open up the file that we created last class really quickly before we go on break. What I'm going to show you how to do is how to calculate area, okay? Some of you might be wondering, okay, so you're giving me these area stipulations on the cabin. Well, how do I know what the area of the space is? Well, we've all probably taken basic geometry. We know we can calculate area by doing length times width, but that becomes very tedious as you're going to have multiple shapes and sizes to your cabin. So let me open up what we created last class, and I will use that as a kind of an easier demonstrating tool. Let's see. All right. Why is that on here? For some reason my thumb drive is not coming up. All right, I'm just going to do it right here. All right, so let's just say I'm going to create my polyline here. I'm going to do 50 feet by 30 feet. Trying to make a more reasonable size cabin. Okay, so let's just say that this is our cabin footprint. All right, maybe we'll throw in a couple extra lines. We'll just pretend that this is the kitchen, maybe this is the living room, something like that. Okay, just kind of making this up. So let's say you want to know the area of one of these spaces. Okay, if you type in A AA, that's going to be the shortcut for area. You can also just type in area. All right, and what it's going to tell you to do is says to specify the first corner of the area that you're trying to calculate, okay? So if I click on the first corner, we'll say it's this one right here. What I'm then going to do is I'm going to specify each of the corners in the space that I'm trying to calculate, okay? So as soon as you see the green little area kind of fill up the entire space, all you do is you hit enter, and you'll notice right here that it says that that space is 295.233 square feet. Okay, so that's a quick little way to be able to calculate the area of your different spaces. So as you're creating them, do that. Use the area tool to get an idea of how big your spaces are. The last thing, actually, unfortunately, I hated seeing this last semester, but I had someone that just clicked on the polyline tool last semester and just kind of created a fun shape, but he did it exactly like I did over here, to which I wasn't thinking about scale whatsoever when I created this. And he created a really cool shape, and he started to design the interior of his cabin, but then he called me over and he said, hey, the interior of my cabin is about 450,000 square feet. So think about scale when you're drawing. I don't see that happen very often, but it does happen. Yeah?
Can we scale things down once they've already been made?
You can. There is a scale tool. So for example, I'll show you how to use it. It's very easy. You select the item that you want to scale, and you can click on scale, specify a point, and then you can just type in a scale factor, so like 0.5. That will make that half the size. So, but the thing about scaling up and down is if you create a door, it becomes very tricky to get things the exact size. You can do that. There are other ways to scale that. I'll show you those at a later time, but it's a lot easier. You'll be a lot more efficient if you just start by being at the correct scale in the first place. Okay? You're not going to run into very many scenarios to where you're like, wow, I really wish this entire house was like 75% of the size. You probably won't do that because you're not going to want to scale the entire house. You'll probably, you're going to want to modify different elements of different spaces to kind of get the size that you want. Okay? Any more questions before I stop the recording?
I have a question.
Yeah.